Hello and welcome to Agency Office Hours live Q&A for July 2023, or if you're watching the video, forever. I'm Karl Sakas, Agency Advisor, and here's a preview of the questions that I will be answering today to help you grow your agency more smoothly and more profitably this year and beyond. Our first question today is from Chris in Virginia, specifically looking at productivity. And in particular, what are some ways to measure your agency's productivity beyond billables alone? Next, we have a question from Martin in Vienna, Austria, specifically around pipeline. What can you do to grow a strong business development pipeline in times like now, where things are a bit challenging from a market and economy perspective? I'll share a preview about my new How to Stop Scope Creep workshop, which starts tomorrow. If you're watching this live, you can still join, you can still get a ticket, and would love to have you as part of that program, you and your team. Then Rodrigo in Brazil has a question about partnerships, specifically how to build partnerships for referrals with other agencies. And finally, Laura in British Columbia has a question about business development, specifically how to shorten your sales cycles. If I mentioned you, please be ready to unmute yourself when the time comes and join on camera. If you have a question that you would like to answer or like me to answer in the future, go ahead and include that when you RSVP. We are accepting questions for future events. My colleague Kate, who's our producer today, will let you know beforehand if you've been accepted for your Q&A spot. As a reminder, we are recording today, so don't share anything out loud that you don't want to become public. All right. Well, first up is Chris. Chris, if you want to come off mute and join on video. Chris, welcome to Agency Office Hours from Sakas & Company.
Well, thanks for taking the question, Karl.
Absolutely. So to paraphrase, here's the question you asked, and then if you could elaborate a bit, and then we'll dig in on answering. Your paraphrase version was, how can we measure productivity and utilization beyond billable hours? If you could, please elaborate.
Sure, and it might help to give just a little background on the agency first. So we're a digital marketing and HubSpot agency. We're about 45 people. All the work we do is retainer work. I would say 99% of what we do is retainer work, okay? And so that means the work that we do is kind of pre-planned to a point, but as you know, as things kind of go on, it becomes a bit more consultative and you have to kind of adjust and pivot depending on what's working and what's not. We measure a lot. I'm an ops guy. I love data. So I convert, I establish metrics around client demand based on hourly rate. If they're paying us this much at this intended hourly rate, it's going to require this much work, this many hours of work. I look at capacity metrics of my team based off of, here's what the expected utilization rate is. So if they're this percent of time over the week, they have this many hours to give. And from that, I think, estimate our capacity versus our demand. Okay, so I have all those metrics. Here's the curveball. We are piloting a 4-day work week. And the 4-day work week model that we're using is the 100-80-100, which means 100% of the output for 80% of the time and 100% of the pay. So the challenge that this has created is, how do we measure productivity? Because we're not supposed to lose productivity in this 4-day work week model. And the problem that I have, or the challenge that I have with measuring things, measuring productivity based off of hourly rate, or not hourly rate, but billed hours.
Yes.
Is that what we're doing with 4-day work week is we're trying to incentivize people to figure out how to do a task in less time so that they can get that free day on Friday.
Yes.
So if I'm saying that you're not doing your job unless you spend an hour on this task, that's the opposite incentive of what I'm trying to create with 4-day work week. So I've been trying to find another metric, and I kind of came up with something that I haven't heard from anybody else around turnaround times, but I'm curious other ways people are doing this. Again, taking into account that this is not project work, so we can't just say project complete out the door, because everything's continuous. So that's the background on the question.
Thank you for sharing the background. And for everyone who's listening, if you're joining live, go ahead and share in chat. How do you measure productivity? Whether it's by billables or something else, go ahead and share. Would love to hear your thoughts on this. So ultimately, to summarize, as your agency is shifting toward a 4-day work week, where the goal, as you said, is 100, 80, 100, that is 100% of the productivity in 80% of the time for 100% of the pay, how do you measure productivity? Where in the past it was about, how many hours were worked on a task within, in your case, within an existing retainer. So let's take a look at that. One key question here is around billing model within the retainer. When most people mention retainers, it's a fixed price per month for some sort of a fixed amount of work. Say a client is paying you, X $1,000 a month. What are they typically getting or guaranteed for that at the moment, Chris?
So depending on the client, but generally speaking, there's going to be, we take that, let's say it's 5,000, you divide by the hourly rate, it gives you a certain number of hours. We're running paid search campaigns, we're running display campaigns.
Okay.
We might be producing some content, doing some ongoing SEO work, building workflows in HubSpot. So again, depending on the client, it's going to be some combination of those things. And we know that, I would say, we come out of the gate when we sell the client knowing that, hey, this is what we're going to do.
Right.
Really, no matter what for the next 6 months. But as time goes on, we see what works and what doesn't, or they have new priorities. We shift that. We either keep the retainer the same and just change where the time is going, or we grow that account in order to provide more time to do things.
So there are a few ways to look at this, and there is not a perfect solution. The idea of a 4-day work week is something a lot of people are interested in. If an agency bills hourly, where it's an hourly rate per person or a blended rate for everyone, you can't really get to a 4-day work week without basically raising the rates. So let's take a look at some possibilities. One would be to basically assume that everyone on the team is now magically, automatically 25% more productive, right? That they can get done in 4 days what used to take 5. And so if we're assuming that, in theory, each hour you're going to assume is going to be 25% more productive. Obviously, it doesn't work out exactly like that. It's going to vary. But the simplest solution is just to say, all right, 1 hour of team time is the equivalent to 1.25 of the sort of old productivity measure. That's a possibility. But we could also look at what are some other ways that clients get value and agencies deliver value. One of those is, we could think of it as value created. That's especially applicable if you're doing lead gen. For instance, I had a dentist client years ago as director of client services at an agency, where the primary job was to help them get new patients in the door. As one of the owners of the practice said, get them in the seat and we'll take it from there. And so, we could say, well, based on the lifetime patient value, which I'd help them calculate, we brought in, 40 new patients last month. Those are worth $5,000 a piece. We delivered this much in lifetime value. You're paying us a fraction of that. They didn't ask how many hours we spent because they were happy to be getting the lead. So value created is a piece. If you've got team members that are client facing, especially if they're in an account manager role, you could be rewarding upsells. There could be something related to rewarding innovation. For instance, finding ways to get things done more efficiently. I once inherited a report as a sales and marketing analyst that my predecessor said, and this was true when I followed their directions, that it would take 2 weeks, like 80 hours to get it done. And the first time I did it, I'm like, there's got to be a more efficient way. And I did various things to optimize the process. And instead of taking 2 weeks every quarter, I got it down to 2 days every quarter. Was there a reward from that? No, although the indirect reward was that I had time to do other stuff instead. That's a piece. Another one, if we're looking more toward task-related things, something related to goal completion. For instance, someone's goal might be to, say, optimize a certain number of campaigns in a week. And if they're able to optimize more, assuming they're meeting a certain quality standard, that's good. You can also look at accuracy and speed, although you can't look at those in a vacuum. For instance, if someone is amazingly accurate, but they take a year to get it done, that's probably not ideal. On the other hand, if they get it done in, 5 minutes, but it's done terribly, that's not good either. So if it's accuracy with speed or speed with accuracy, you need to look at both. And the final thing that comes to mind, and then let's take a look at what you might do next, is something related to, it's a bit fuzzier, empowering others. So for instance, when we hire managers or if we promote someone to be a team lead, we usually assume that their individual personal billables will go down because they're spending time coaching people on the team. But the other assumption is that everyone on the team that they're working with will become more productive themselves because they're getting, thanks to the team lead or the manager, they're getting help on better ways to do things. They're getting advice on how to solve things differently. The manager is helping clear bottlenecks, things like that. So from what I've shared, are there any new ideas you want to explore, or does that affirm the direction you're going in now, Chris?
Yeah, there's some new ideas in there and some of the other things that I've heard or explored myself. Tracking number of tasks completed. It's one. One that I didn't hear, which is something that we're going to try to pilot as well, is we treat, first of all of our planning and measurement is still based off of a 5-day work week. Capacity of our team, and then if client's demand doesn't change.
Right.
And so one of the things that I want to track to see if, like, one of the negative outcomes I could expect from this, that tasks, you don't have that Friday to finish stuff out. So things get pushed out, right? So we're setting up a turnaround time metric in teamwork. And we know that we always want to keep, like, our standard task, we want that to be done in 2 weeks. All right. Now you could have rush jobs, you could have things that get planned out much further, but the standard turnaround time is 2 weeks. And that's what it's been, for a while. And so we figure if our capacity numbers match our demand and that hits all the financial metrics that we want to hit.
Yes.
And yet we're still turning things around in 2 weeks. Then, and the lagging metrics of our NPS score, another metric I came up with, which is NVS, net value score, which is the same question, but how valuable do you consider the work, to kind of separate out, kind of the relationship that comes with NPS and the value part of NVS.
Yeah.
If all that remains and we're still hitting account growth metrics, retention metrics, we're turning things around in time. While I can't measure it as granularly as I can now,
right,
that would have to imply efficiencies are being created while still achieving the outcome.
That makes sense. And do consider that you are at the leading edge of this right now. Like, a lot of people are still talking about 4-day work weeks, much less what the implications are and what the externalities might be. So you are leading on this. One thing that might help reduce some of the pressure would be to say, we're going to do a 1 month or a 3-month trial. Maybe you're committed to doing the 4-day work week, although it could be conditional on certain outcomes. But you can say, we're going to measure things like this for a month or 2 months or 3 months and evaluate. That way you're not getting everyone to commit to something before you know fully what's going to happen, because you won't know until you get into it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we're doing this as a really good point. We're doing this as a 90-day pilot, and the team understands we have to hold these metrics. And if they start to slip, we're going to have to break back into that Friday.
Yes.
And the other part here too, and I got this talking to some other agency owners who have done like 4.5 days as well. Now, I would suspect that, and I've already seen this, we've posted our first job now as a 4-day work week pilot company.
Yes.
Applicant pool was stronger. And so I think over time, as we continue to add to our team, we're going to be able to bring in even better talent and who are more productive. And as a 10Xer, or somebody who you consider, that A player can be
Yeah.
not just 1.5 times more effective, but maybe 10 times more. So if you can kind of level that average up closer to 10x overall, I think there's going to be some efficiency in there. So yeah, the thesis has a lot of things that are yet to be worked out and are a little bit more not so quantifiable, but more qualitative in nature. And that's what makes me a little antsy. But there's so many components to this that I think can kind of work their way into the system, provided we continue to achieve those lagging metrics.
Right. You need to get things done. And people also need to feel like the tracking system is fair. A client created a internal metric system that informed what employee bonuses were. And it was extremely complex. They had a really good CFO to help figure out the details. And so, thinking as the agency advisor, it was the most fair system I had seen. They asked for my feedback. Problem is, employees saw it as a bit of a, black box. They didn't know what was happening. And if it was someone whose bonus went down, they wouldn't be thrilled about that. My colleague Kate has shared a couple links in chat if you're joining us live. One is my article about new rope versus wet twine as a continuum for looking at employee quality. Also, the Wikipedia article about Parkinson's law, about how work tends to expand or contract to the space available. Final comment on this before we shift over to Martin's question. Consider that, if Friday is, historically the overflow day, the odds are Thursday afternoon is going to become the new overflow day if you're taking Fridays off. So that may mean don't schedule meetings the second half of Thursday. Maybe it's, maybe there's some meetings to discuss direction Thursday morning kind of thing. Or as a client's employee mentioned on a coaching call a while back, we were speaking on a Thursday afternoon and they said, happy Friday Junior. Thursday is Friday Junior.
Yeah.
To you. Well, Chris, good luck as you work through things and would love to hear how things go.
Thanks, Carl. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely. All right. Well, next up, we have a question from Martin. Martin, if you want to unmute yourself and welcome to Agency Office Hours.
I'm honored, Karl, to be your guest.
Well, to paraphrase, here's the question you asked, and then would love to hear a bit of background, and then we'll dig in on answering. You had a question related to pipeline. Specifically, how can agencies grow a strong pipeline in a tough economy?
Exactly.
So please, if you could share a bit more.
Our history is we are a HubSpot agency like Chris.
Yeah.
Much smaller. We are only 8 people here in Austria. It's a small market. But we have been the first HubSpot partner in Austria 12 years ago. So we are the pioneers of inbound and HubSpot in this country.
Yes.
And we were able, because we started so early, to build up a very strong inbound pipeline for ourselves. Best times we had 250 leads a month. And from these 250 leads, it was quite easy to qualify 20 SQLs and win 2 or 3 new clients. And this is for a small agency like ours.
Yeah.
Great, really great. But what is happening in the last, I say 1 year or 2 years, is that this pipeline is trying out. Inbound marketing does not work as it was working before. And so we are getting less leads for our own inbound marketing, and we have to think about what other channels we should address. So we were trying to do some social media outreach, outbound things. But there's a lot of other questions. For example, the question, is inbound marketing still a product market fit here? Has the caravan moved on with, I don't know, demand generation or ABM or other new, I don't know how to tell it, new marketing approaches?
Yeah.
And so I'm still struggling and testing, and I have not found really a good way how to compensate what we are losing in inbound.
So there are a lot of pieces there, and certainly the question applies to anyone running any agency from a focus perspective. So let's talk about ways to build pipeline and what about inbound in particular. So to summarize, if pipeline has slowed down, what can you do to get things moving and to grow the pipeline and make things go faster? First, and this is for everyone, keep in mind that right now is a tough time. Within the past year or so, most agencies have reported a slowdown in sales inquiries and people taking more time to make decisions, even if they do move forward. Last week, an agency owner said it feels like this year, 2023, is a 4-month delay compared to what it took to close things before. So that's something to keep in mind. Talked to someone who works at a Marketo agency, and they had said that they've been in business for a few years, that they hadn't closed any net new logos in the past year, right? A lot of upsells and things like that. Kind of thing, but not bringing in totally new businesses. Some of that depends on the size of the client and things like that. But it is a tough time right now. So if anyone's like, oh, numbers are down, they are. I do think it's cyclical. I think it will turn around. I don't know when. One thing that can be helpful is you're trying to figure out, what's going on. If you're looking for some perhaps comfort or otherwise, is to go to Google Trends. So that's trends.google.com. And you can put in different keywords. So for instance, Martin, you could put in inbound marketing. You can see, how is the search volume changing over time? You can also compare that to other things too, perhaps say compared to digital marketing in general. And you can also dig in. You could look for instance, inbound marketing agency volume versus digital marketing agency volume. And you can look at it geographically as well. So, you're going to see swings in things. You can also see, if it's a downward trend, that may accelerate needing to do something different. Now, what is new? What is next? I know you mentioned ABM, account-based marketing. All of my consulting work is solely with agencies for over a decade. However, for 5 years, I co-founded and ran as a volunteer a CMO networking group. So chief marketing officers, no agencies allowed. I was the only non-CMO in the room as the moderator of the group. Everything was confidential. One of the things that the CMOs kept coming back to was revenue attribution. They wanted to know if they spent this amount of money on marketing, what was the return? Or for this amount of revenue, what activities had driven that? Now, some of the more sophisticated CMOs were looking at a wide range of models, not just first touch or last touch, but looking at, different shapes and things like that. So I would say, Martin, for you and for everyone, revenue attribution is something that, CMOs keep talking about. In 5 years, we probably covered a version of revenue attribution 5 times out of about 15 meetings. So that was a popular topic. It may also help to take a look, and Kate, if you could share the article about the wrong river, wrong spot. And this is true for everyone, but Martin, if you think about your current client base, are they the clients you want to serve in the future? For instance, are they smaller than ones you'd like to serve in the future? In that case, if we think of, fishing, if you're trying to find either more of them or bigger ones, are you fishing in the wrong spot? Maybe if you look in a different place, maybe you'll find them. Or is it potentially the wrong river altogether? You're looking for a saltwater fish and you're fishing in a freshwater stream or something like that. I've not been fishing in a while, but that's something to consider. Like, are they out there? I'd also take a look, starting with your existing clients. Are there things they are hiring agencies to do that they aren't paying you to do, but that they're spending money on? Do you happen to know, is anything coming to mind, Martin, for your clients?
Sure, we are, there's competition. There's not competition so strong in inbound marketing agency, but there's a lot of performance marketing agencies, digital marketing agencies. So it looks like we have the approach that we are installing with HubSpot. We are installing an inbound marketing agency process. It's not just the marketing campaign. It's we are not focusing on campaigns, but it looks like in the moment that the people who are selling campaigns, it's easier to explain. It's easier to tell, I'm doing your, I don't, LinkedIn ads, I'm doing your Google ads or whatever. And this is somehow a shift I see, is that it's the short-term, it's not even results, it's the short-term activities, getting more budget, and then it's smaller budgets, it's much smaller budgets, it's a campaign. And so this is something I see, yeah, but still, I think we shouldn't go there. We are, yeah.
That's a philosophical question, and you're not alone in experiencing that, where people are focused more toward short-term things. You know, like how do we get business in the door right now? That happened. I did an article around CMO insights from the CMO group, and was sharing that as the pandemic started in 2020, you know, agencies were saying everything is slowed down. How do I get people to buy? Well, that's what the CMOs were saying privately. Everything is slowed down. How do I get people to buy? And so it just sort of cascaded. So at least at the moment, a lot of companies are shifting toward what's going to get money quickly. The problem back then, and this is true for some companies now, the CEO was pressuring the CMO to do short-term promotions, discounting, you know, otherwise cut prices in a way that really could hurt the brand long-term, would dilute things. And it turned into this political battle. Is the CEO going to force the CMO to cut things? If you're joining live, we've shared some articles, some about the CMO insights. We've also shared the article about recession prep. Is this a recession? I don't know. It's kind of a weird economic situation right now. But one of the things I noted in my Prepare for Future Recession article in 2019 is around staple services, things that clients need, that every client needs. For instance, lead generation is one of those. On the other hand, branding is nice to have, but it's not as critical. Take a look at your services, Martin and everyone. Are there things that are close to revenue? Clients are probably going to be more willing to spend money on that now.
That's a good advice. Yeah.
Final bit, you know, thinking about the pieces here, and Kate has shared a link in chat to a Google Trends search comparing inbound marketing versus digital marketing. So, you know, people check that out if you're joining live to see how the trends are going. You know, what is within your control? You can't control all of the sales outcomes, right? If we think about results versus activities, activities are doing the outreach, doing the phone call, doing the proposal, and eventually, hopefully, people close. Now, if you don't do any doing activities doesn't guarantee that it'll get results, but if you don't do any activities, you're probably not going to get results. So consider what is the highest return. I'm currently doing a survey with DataBox right now in partnership with them. One of the things we found, one of the things we found, still doing some analysis, the larger and higher performing, that is more profitable agencies, are more likely to do paid advertising than agencies that are smaller. It does make sense. A smaller agency has less money to spend on paid ads. Paid ads are a tough thing because you're competing with other agencies doing paid ads, but you might want to consider, is there, and this is for everyone, is there a lead magnet that you could promote through paid ads about your agency that would help clients see a close to revenue outcome? If there is, it's probably worth putting some budget and some time into promoting that.
Yeah.
So, Martin, please let me know how things go. And good luck.
Thank you. Thank you for your advice. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
It was very helpful.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, as a preview coming up, we have questions, further discussion, discussing around business development and pipeline. We have a question from Rodrigo in Brazil about building partnerships for the agency, and a question from Laura in Canada and British Columbia, looking at how do we shorten our sales cycles. So those are coming up next, but first, a word from our sponsor, me. Today's Agency Office Hours is sponsored by Sakas and Company, helping you make smarter decisions for smoother growth, helping agency owners work less and earn more, and helping create professional growth opportunities for your team. Do any of these problems sound familiar? Your team is struggling to deliver work on time and on budget. Things are often late and or over budget. Clients regularly demand additional work without additional budget, and your team is afraid to push back, worried that they're going to lose the client if they try to stand up for themselves and stand up for the agency. And maybe profits are down and you need to make some hard choices in the near future. If any of those sound familiar, you might have a problem with scope creep. Scope creep is when clients want more, and it becomes a problem when they don't want to pay for it. Fortunately, you are not stuck saying yes to the free work. There are a range of options, and that's why I've created the new 3-week How to Stop Scope Creep workshop. It's a virtual workshop delivered live, but there are recordings if you can't make one of the live sessions. The first session is July 12th, 2023, and then it'll be July 19th and July 26th, 2 hours on a Wednesday. And again, you can join asynchronously as well. We're going to look at why scope creep keeps happening at your agency. There are 8 reasons why, and knowing which ones will help you solve it. We'll take a look at how to handle scope creep when it comes up, as it will be inevitable, including some techniques to help you say no when a client wants you to say yes. And finally, based on everything you've learned, both in the live sessions and in the exercises you've done in between, we'll take a look at how to prevent or at least reduce scope creep in the future. Odds are, if you do the workshop, if you get just one project or just one client under control, or at least a little better under control, it can pay for the workshop itself. There's a discount if you bring 5 or more people, and would love to have you in the How to Stop Scope Creep workshop. We have a link to that in chat, or if you're watching the video, the link as well. But don't dally, because eventually sales will close. All right. Well, next up, we have a question from Rodrigo in Brazil. Let's go ahead and answer that question. All right. So, Kate, if you don't mind coming on camera and sharing the question, and I see he wasn't able to join live. Let's have a discussion.
Yeah, so Rodrigo asked, how can we build strong agency partnerships, and where to start, how to make sure it's successful from the beginning?
Well, let's talk a bit about that. When it comes to building agency partnerships, you want to make sure you're creating a win-win opportunity. That is, your agency benefits and the other business, whether it's another agency or a software firm or a consultant in your industry, is going to benefit as well. But really, it's kind of a win-win-win, 3 wins, because yes, it's you and the referrer, but it's also the end client. Everyone needs to benefit from what happened. For instance, I have a client VIP referral program. If one of my existing or past clients refers someone, they receive a credit from me for the referral, a nominal amount. And importantly, the person they refer also receives a credit on their first invoice. Why? Well, the goal is to create a win-win-win, right? This makes the referrer look like a hero to the person that pointed them to me, because thanks to knowing that person, they'll have saved, $500. It's a good deal. So you need to find win-win-win. And by the way, if you're joining us live, please share in chat, what do you look for in partnerships? And maybe if you have a partnership that works well, you don't have to mention the name of the business, but what about it works well? Also, if you've had a partnership that went poorly, don't share names out loud, what went wrong? What happened there? Most often, the problem that people mention is they'll have a discussion about a partnership and nothing ever comes from it, right? Like that's that. They have a great call, seems like everyone's going to be a great match, and then nothing ever happens. You're going to have to nurture it. It's kind of like a client relationship. It's not as close as a client relationship, but ultimately you have to invest in making it work. What some agencies will do is they'll have a partner newsletter. Maybe their regular newsletter is going out every week, or some sort of other content, or maybe it's automated. Maybe once a quarter they have an update of some sort. Make sure you're focusing on how they're benefiting, rather than just making it all about you. So keep in mind, it's not transactional. It takes time and it takes trust. Whenever I consider potential referral relationships, whether it's referral for services or if it's more of an affiliate relationship, like for software, I'm putting my reputation on the line, right? If I'm going to recommend someone, I need to feel confident that they're going to do a good job. And if that something goes wrong, there's a human that I can talk to and get their help fixing things, rather than just sort of dumping people off into a potential bad situation. So keep in mind, if someone cold emails you, you may not be particularly interested in a relationship. And likewise, if you're the one looking to start a partnership, just cold emailing alone isn't going to do it. On the other hand, what about, say, going to a conference? For instance, I will be serving as a moderator at David Baker's upcoming MYOB conference coming up in Atlanta in October. Did a similar thing last year with his conference, where I'm moderating one of the breakfast roundtables. When you go to a conference, I think last year was like 150 people. This year, I believe he's targeting 250 people. That is an opportunity to meet with other people that you might work with, and you hit it off at breakfast, or at lunch, or dinner, or drinks, or what have you. That tends to start better than a cold email. So investing the money to go to the conference can make a difference. Also keep in mind, you're looking for, trying to find incentive alignment. And actually, Kate, if you could share our article, the conference recap. For the past 7 years, I've done a recap of agency conferences each year, and I update it throughout the year. We'll share that in chat. So if there's a conference that you want to check out, I'll be at MYOB in October. Coming up later this month, there is the Ad Age Small Agency Conference. I won't be at that, but certainly it's other independent agencies. Where are people gathering? That's a good opportunity for that. Keep in mind, what are people's incentives? Why is it in their interest to send business to you? For instance, if you're an SEO agency, another SEO agency probably isn't going to want to send you business. Or if they do, they may be their worst prospects and you're just getting kind of the dregs along the way. On the other hand, if it's a branding agency that doesn't do SEO, their clients need SEO and they want someone to send people to. Or for instance, you do SEO, but you don't do PPC. Well, that would be a good opportunity to partner with an agency that does the opposite. Certainly no guarantee just that you start the partnership that you're going to get things, but it's worth considering. Also, from an incentive perspective, think about the financial side. Most of my referral arrangements are, not money changing hands. If there is, I'll disclose that I have a referral agreement, but a lot of it is like, I think people would benefit from them. It's up to them to take it from there. It could be different on the affiliate side, say for software subscriptions, things like that. But you need to decide, are you going to pay a referral fee? If so, how much? The sort of generous side would be 10%. You might make it 5%, or maybe it's 10% for year one, year two is 5%, and after that, maybe it's nothing, because the assumption is you're retaining people along the way. It's up to you. Just be ready for that before the initial conversation. What are the bounds? And check out those in-person events. By the way, if you have a favorite in-person event, either for agencies or otherwise, you're joining us live, please share in chat. What are your favorite agency conferences? Would love to hear. Kate, thinking about our work with clients and building partnerships, Is there anything that you would add before we shift over to Laura's question?
Yeah, I would also add, don't underestimate the power of reconnecting with people. So something that you could do is look at your LinkedIn contacts, find people from your past, see what they're up to, see if there's anything that would work in terms of a partnership in that way. Because it is a small world, and reconnecting with people can have a big impact.
For sure. And great point about LinkedIn. We'll share the tutorial. If you have not done this recently, download your LinkedIn contacts and take a look through. You may be surprised to see that someone you knew, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, is now working at a company you would love to help. Assuming that you or they didn't burn bridges before, maybe now is a good time to reconnect. Be transparent about it. Like, don't be like, oh, great to catch up, and then you're like diving into your capabilities deck, kind of thing. Don't do that. But there may be something, something about that. For instance, say you notice that they are the hiring manager for a particular role, an area where you help. I don't know if it's someone you know well, you could offer to say, hey, here are some tips we found are helpful. Let me know if you'd like to chat further. I don't know. You need to deliver some value. Do keep in mind when you download your contacts, you likely will not get the email addresses for everyone in the CSV export. They've made some changes that they usually don't include that now. I think the last time I did it, it was email addresses for maybe 10%. But keep in mind, these are people you're connected with on LinkedIn, so you can manually get their email address through the contact details. All right. Well, we have time for one final, Kate, thank you for joining. And of course, as usual, for sharing. We have a final question today from Laura in British Columbia. Laura, if you want to come off mute and join, thank you for joining Agency Office Hours.
Thank you for having me.
So to paraphrase, your question is about business development, specifically, how can agencies shorten their sales cycle? If you could share a bit about your agency and what you're running into, and then let's look at helping solve things.
Gladly, thank you. So I have been running Blackbean for about 5 years now. We're a recurring marketing services agency, vertically focused on B2B marketing for the industrial sector only. So we're talking manufacturing, automation, chemical, and such.
Okay.
We service primarily the prairies in Canada, which is like the 3 main provinces, and the Midwest in the US.
Got it.
We, just like Martin was talking about, we have seen a slowdown in leads. So what we've done about a year ago, we've beefed up our outbound, which was really the right decision to make.
Yes.
I just really wanted to make sure we had the right pillars for our own marketing really set in place. We had a strong content marketing pillar in place, referrals and such, but we didn't have any outbound. So we made sure to have that pillar so that our table wasn't wobbly, so to speak. That was definitely the right decision, because inbound has just, I think our last inbound lead was probably in February, maybe March.
Wow.
It's been a while, but outbound is working well. Now, the flip side of outbound is you get people, they may be lukewarm in terms of leads temperature, but unless inbounds where they're ready to make a decision, you have to work more at it. So we went from let's say a 4 to 6 week, contact to close type of duration to probably 4 to 6 months now. I think I'm in the final stages of closing a lead I started working on 2 years ago.
Yes.
So this is there anything we can do as agency owners or people in business development to try and shorten that lead cycle, or sales cycle rather, as much as possible?
Let's take a look at that. And by the way, for anyone who's joining live, what do you do to shorten your sales cycles? Would love to hear what you have to share there. So let's dig on this. So again, to summarize, what can agencies do to shorten their sales cycle, especially during difficult economic times? Laura, the thing you mentioned about, inbound opportunities, which have slowed down, indeed, that's true for most agencies. And then instead of being 4 to 6 weeks from contact to close, it's more like 4 to 6 months. So it's basically taking 4 times longer, or I guess if we're technical, there are 4.3 weeks in a month on average. 4 times longer. I mean, that's frustrating. Some of it is about patience. Like there's only so much you can do to get people to go faster. And if you push too hard, it comes across as like, we're being desperate, right? So some of it's patience. It also gets into the things you're doing now around diversifying. So you're doing solely inbound, you're now doing outbound outreach as well. So that's good, right? As one has dropped, you've upped the other, and that's helping. I'm really glad that you started that. I'm curious with your outbound outreach, as you mentioned, they're a bit more lukewarm. They're not quite as ready to buy. That does make sense. What is the initial offer, or sort of the thing that you're suggesting to them in the initial outreach? Like, why should they talk to you?
Quite frankly, our specialty is a strong incentive, because outbound through LinkedIn, and we're only targeting decision makers in the industries that we work with. Most of the time they've never heard of it.
Okay.
We also send out an intro video from me. Okay, this call is recorded, so I can't say too much.
Sure. No, that's okay. But
Yeah, I think it's a novelty to those decision makers to find a woman working in their field. So the novelty plus the video usually leads to a very strong conversion rate. But then it's a lot of the time it's like they are in exploration phases. Then we jump into a sales call that's typically 20 minutes long. And it's just a lot of following up. But I've also found that through referral leads, actually, a lot of really good conversations, and then they tend to drop off the radar. So it's like, we're not quite ready yet. Let's talking
yeah,
let's talk
yeah.
next.
You're not alone in experiencing that. And I think, the whole idea of follow-up and nurture is almost its own conversation, but we'll take a look at that as well. If we think about, when someone isn't quite ready to buy, it does make sense that they're going to sort of drag their feet. And that's even true for referrals. Maybe someone mentions to one of your clients, oh yeah, I'm thinking of getting help with marketing. Your current client is like, oh, I know someone to talk to. They're perfect and all. And that may be a case where the person who mentioned they were looking for help was very early in the buying process, and they were still sort of exploring. So what can you do? Well, let's look at 2 things. Let's look at early stage in the communication process with outbound opportunities, as well as nurture. When it comes to people that are early in the sales process, to me, the key thing is don't overinvest at that point. The goal is to be friendly, the goal is to be helpful. But for instance, one of my, standard things is, if someone says they don't have a budget yet, do not create a proposal for them. And I know that's, you're not saying that you are, but for instance, in my process, if someone is very early stage, I'll have them fill out my pre-intake questionnaire, 15 to 20 minutes, to share more about what they're running into, where they've been, where they want to go, kind of thing. And if someone, I actually ask, where are you currently in the decision process? If someone is very early, depending, I might send an email with more info, but not do a call, or I might do my intro call, which is 30 minutes. And other than reading their materials, I don't do any significant prep. That is, I don't create, unless I happen to have time, an agenda for the call. I'm not digging in to identify lots of possible questions to probe about what's going on. This is more just like, do we want to talk further? Is there relationship chemistry to the point that we want to dig deeper? Sometimes it might involve a follow-up, bringing in their business partner. It might involve sharing some more. It might involve going to some sort of discovery engagement. the key thing is if you don't overinvest up front, you're not going to be as disappointed if they didn't move forward. Like for me, if someone at the end of an intro call, they're like, yeah, okay, this is good, but I'm gonna have to wait till next year. Great. I invested 30 minutes plus a bit of, scheduling back and forth. That's fine. It's different if I do an exploratory call, which is longer, there's more prep, it's more in depth. We do further stuff. I do very lightweight proposals, but if it gets to the point of a proposal and someone's like, maybe not, to me, that's a waste. So don't overinvest at the beginning. I like the 20-minute sales call. You might want to consider if you even want to promise even less from that call. If you think about, what are you promising from it? Certainly, if someone doesn't have a budget yet, I would not create a proposal. And sometimes it's like if you're getting the sense that they're dragging their feet or have wet feet or other foot-related metaphors, let them come back to you, which gets back to the nurture. But before we take a look at nurture, we've only got about 6 minutes left. Any question or reaction about the don't overinvest up front angle?
No, other than that, I agree. It's hard when all of the signals are saying, oh, you definitely should invest. And then at the last minute, it's like, oh, we got busy. We'll revisit this in 2 quarters.
Yes, yes.
But I think that's just the nature of the business where we just have to learn to go with it.
I mean, thinking about, mentioning earlier around, we can only control the activities that lead to the results, and activities don't guarantee results. But if you don't do any activities, you're probably not going to get results unless someone just magically shows up. I think my longest contact or a form of contact to close was 6 years. Someone saw me speak at the Inbound conference, HubSpot's conference in 2015. They joined my email list then. They were, a regular subscriber. And in 2021, they raised their hand for help. And, we've done a couple engagements together. But, that's a case. I asked once we got started, I'm like, why did you take 6 years to get my help? Like, you obviously like my advice. Why did you wait? They said, well, you have all this free stuff. We used all of that first. And finally, after we went through all of that, and I think I have over 400 articles on the website. They're like, finally, we're ready for more help. Okay. But that actually segues over to the final point around nurtures. And by the way, for sharing in chat, Chris, thank you for the sharing around how much of it is outbound versus inbound. Indeed, outbound tends to be slower and take longer. You also don't have quite the relationship capital to demand or request info up front. Like, I won't get on a call if people haven't completed the pre-questionnaire. But if this is someone that you or someone at the agency cold emailed to try to get them on the phone, they're like, well, wait, why should I share all of this? I don't even know if you're a match. You just send me a random email kind of thing. You don't have quite the same relationship. And noting in this example, outbound close time is at best 90 to 100 days, but it can take years. Outbound gets them into our email list. They get dripped, 10 webinars, get a follow-up call every quarter, hopefully eventually closing. And it's tough to expedite based on how the relationship started. So I think, Laura, you're not alone in experiencing that. Let's talk about nurtures, though, as the final point. So, ideally, when anyone shows up, they have something that is either adding them to the newsletter, or by the end of the intro call, if it's clear they're not a match, you could either encourage them to sign up, or however you're approaching that, to get updates, whether that's the general newsletter or something that's a bit more custom to them. So in my case, if I have, say, a speaking engagement, I'll have the opt-in, there's the initial freebie, and then there may be some specific follow-ups, but generally it's, and you were opting in for my newsletter as well. How are you currently approaching nurtures?
They do opt in into the newsletter because when they sign up for the sales call, it marks them as a marketing contact.
Got it.
And yeah, just like touch points. If there's an article that we just published that is relevant to the problem that we initially discussed, we'll actually send it to them. They do get like frequent touch points through
Okay.
nurturing.
Something that might come in handy is to consider, and this is for everyone, and as Laura, as we wrap up answering your question, whether to consider having something in your CRM, whatever you're using. Maybe certain people are monthly touch points, others are quarterly, other are annual, and you can decide how you want to make this happen. But the idea there is that, you know, if it's quarterly, you review, okay, out of the quarterly people, have I been in touch? Is there anyone I haven't been in touch with in the past quarter? Great, they're on the outreach list. If it's annual and, you know, maybe you're reviewing that quarterly or something like that, do they need a follow-up? And you can automate some of that. It depends on how many people you're reaching out to. But basically make sure that you're doing the touch point. So when someone says, let's talk in a few months, I have to say, I think sometimes that is often, if not a lie, it's at least delusional, right? They're like, okay, I know it's delusional when someone's like, oh, it'll be less busy in a few months. No, it won't. It definitely will not be. And by the way, you'll probably be even more busy if you don't get my help and don't get things under control. But, you know, do the follow-up. The more irons you have in the fire, the less pressure to get any particular one to close. So any particular takeaways as we wrap up around what you're going to try from here, either anything new or to keep going with what you're doing?
Not over investing up front. Definitely, that's like the main takeaway. One thing that I do add in nurturing, I try in the initial conversations, if it is over Zoom, to get some insight as to what they're into as to sports goes. Again, 95% of my contacts are men, so I try and find the sports, and then I make a note in the CRM, and then I make a note the big related events. So if this guy's a Viking fan, as soon as the season starts, Stephanie, you know, because it's also about building relationships and building rapport.
It is, and people, you know, people like that. Now, on the other hand, of course, if for instance you're like, oh, you know, I see you're a Mets fan, and like your background is a Yankees logo, that won't work. But definitely something to try. Well, Laura, thank you so much for joining, and would love to hear how things go. Thanks.
Goodbye.
All right. Well, that concludes agency office hours for this month, for July 2023. We'll be back next month, the second Tuesday in August, so August 8th, answering your questions. Or if you want to hear what other people ask, just sign up. You don't have to submit a question. If you do have a question, please include that when you RSVP, and Kate or I will let you know. Thank you so much for joining. Good luck as you work to build your pipeline and make things run more smoothly and make things more productive. You know, it's hard work running an agency, but you know, it's never going to be easy, but you don't have to do it the hard way. Good luck, and love to hear how it goes.